Picture a Tuesday afternoon, a grocery store parking lot, and a brand new full-size truck easing backward into a spot. The driver misjudges it by about a foot. There's a concrete pillar back there, the kind every lot in America has, and the rear corner of that truck kisses it at maybe 3 miles an hour. A little crunch, barely enough to spill your coffee. 20 years ago, that's a scuffed bumper and a bad word, and you drive home. Maybe you take a rubber mallet to it in the driveway that weekend. Maybe you never bother at all. This driver gets an estimate a week later. It's just over $11,000. And then the letter comes, the truck is a total loss. Written off, gone. A truck that starts, steers, and drives exactly like it did that morning. And the insurance company would rather cut a check for the whole thing than pay to fix one corner of it. Here's the part I want you to sit with for a second. It wasn't the dent that did it. The dent was nothing. It was what lives behind that rear corner now. A blind spot radar unit, ultrasonic sensors buried in the bumper, wiring, a bonded aluminum bed panel that can't just be hammered back into shape, and a whole calibration procedure that has to happen before the truck is legally and safely right again. The damage was 3 miles an hour. The bill was the 21st century. I've written up more of these estimates than I'd care to count, and I've stood in enough body shops to watch a $300 job quietly turn into a $3,000 one while the customer's face just falls. So let me be straight with you about what's actually going on here, because the headline you clicked, the one about insurers quietly refusing to cover certain truck features, is true in one way and it's nonsense in another way. And the honest version sitting in the middle is more interesting than either of them. No adjuster is sitting in an office with a red pen crossing out your heated seats. That is not how any of this works, but there are features on modern trucks that quietly wreck the math on a fender bender so badly that the insurance company's answer is to charge you more, total your truck faster, or in at least one very real and documented case I'll get to, flat out refuse to write you a policy at all. There are 10 of them worth knowing. Stay with me, especially for the one near the end, because that's where refusing to cover stops being a figure of speech and becomes a plain on-the-record fact. Before the list, one idea, because the whole thing rests on it. An insurance company prices your policy on 2 questions, and really only 2. How likely are you to file a claim, and how much will it cost them to pay it? That's it. Everything else is detail. Now, for most of the last century, that second number was pretty tame on a truck. A truck was about the most honest machine a regular person could own. A fender was a fender. A bumper was a steel bar that bolted on. A headlight was a sealed beam you bought at any parts counter for a few dollars and swapped in your own driveway with a screwdriver. When something got bent, a good body man beat it back out with his hands and a dolly. You could total up a repair in your head standing right next to the thing. That truck is gone. On a modern one, nearly every panel is wired, censored, sealed, bonded, or tied into a computer that has to be formally told the world just moved. So that second number, the cost to pay a claim, has quietly gone through the roof, even on small hits. And when the cost to fix a truck creeps past somewhere around 70 to 80% of what the truck is actually worth, the insurer doesn't fix it. They write it off and hand you a check for the whole vehicle. That's the machine we're dealing with. Keep it in the back of your mind for all 10 of these, because it's the same trap every single time. It just wears a different hat. Start with the windshield, because it's the one that gets almost everybody. There's a camera mounted up behind your rear view mirror, staring out through the glass, and usually a radar unit tucked behind the grille or down in the front bumper. Together, they run your automatic emergency braking, your lane keeping, your adaptive cruise control. Genuinely useful stuff most of the time. Here's the catch. That camera is aimed through the glass to a tolerance measured in fractions of a degree, and the glass itself is now part of the safety system, not just a window you look through. So you catch a rock on the highway, the single most ordinary thing that can happen to a truck, and you crack the windshield. Used to be $150 piece of glass and a guy in a van in your driveway. Now, when they put the new glass in, that forward camera has to be recalibrated, sometimes against a target board in a shop, sometimes by driving it down a specific stretch of marked road, sometimes both. Roughly 9 out of 10 vehicles from 2023 need that recalibration after a glass swap, and it runs anywhere from about $250 to over $1,000 sitting on top of the glass itself. The front radar, if the bumper gets involved, is another $250 to $450. And here's the ugly part. If a shop skips that calibration to save you money, the camera can be electrically fine, but aimed slightly wrong, throwing no warning light while it quietly misreads the road, or it can start throwing faults across unrelated systems, and your $300 calibration turns into a $1,500 chase through the electronics. A chipped windshield is no longer a chipped windshield. It's a computer that needs reteaching, and a whole industry has grown up around teaching it. Number 2, and this one matters because it's the best-selling vehicle in America. In 2015, Ford switched the F-150's body over from steel to aluminum to save weight and squeeze out better fuel economy. There were real engineering reasons for it, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but aluminum does not behave like steel, not in a crash and not on a bench. You can't just heat it and hammer the dent out the way a good man could with a steel panel. It cracks and tears where steel would stretch. It needs rivets, structural adhesive, and specialized welding, and it has to be repaired in a separate, sealed off area of the shop with its own dedicated tools so that steel dust doesn't contaminate the aluminum and start it corroding from the inside. The Insurance Institute crash tested the aluminum F-150 against the old steel one at low speed, and the aluminum truck cost about 26% more to fix. Across vehicles with a lot of aluminum in them, the average payout per claim runs around 20% higher, and the aluminum F-150 actually gets a collision claim filed on it about 7% more often than the steel one did. There's a famous case of a King Ranch that took a hit to the roof and ran $17,000 and a full month in the shop, and part of that bill was $2,300 in rivets because the shop had to buy them in boxes of 1,000 and bill you for the whole box. Hail is worse still. An aluminum body runs about 40% more to repair after a storm, which means it reaches that total loss line with less damage on it than a steel truck would. There's another wrinkle too. Not every shop is certified to touch it, and in rural stretches where hail actually happens, you might have one qualified shop within 150 miles. A dent that a body man used to work out in an afternoon with his hands is now a replaced, painted, and color blended panel, and sometimes it's a whole new truck. Third, walk around a new truck and count the little round dots studded into the bumpers and the tiny cameras tucked into the mirrors and the tailgate. Those are ultrasonic parking sensors and a 360-degree camera system. And between them, they've turned every corner of your truck into delicate, expensive real estate. Remember that parking lot pillar from the start of all this? That used to scuff a chrome bumper and chrome buffs out. Now the bumper is a painted plastic shell packed with sensors, and behind it sits that same front radar we already talked about. So you tap something at walking speed, a pole, a shopping cart corral, another guy's trailer hitch, and you are not buffing out a scuff. You're replacing sensors, possibly the radar behind them, and then recalibrating the whole array so the truck knows where its own edges are again. The rear blind spot radar runs $200 to $350 to redo. The front stuff, $250 to $450. The little parking ding, the one that every truck earns in its first year of life, has quietly become a calibration job with a 4-figure ceiling. The truck can now see everything around it, which is genuinely nice right up until the moment you bump one single thing, and then all that seeing has to be taught all over again. Number 4, headlights. This one honestly gets under my skin more than the rest, and it's because of how far it's fallen. A headlight used to be the very definition of a simple, fixable part. A sealed beam, 2 wires, the correct voltage. You did it yourself in 5 minutes for the price of a sandwich. Now, on a nice truck, that headlight is an adaptive matrix LED unit. Dozens of individually controlled light segments, a circuit board, a control module, sensors, sometimes little leveling motors, all sealed into one assembly that is explicitly not designed to be opened or repaired. So one LED module fails inside there, or a stone cracks the lens, or you clip a curb hard enough to break the housing, and there is no fixing the broken piece. The whole assembly gets replaced. The manufacturers won't even sell the dealer the circuit board on its own because the housing, the lens, and the electronics are type approved together as one system. It's the whole unit or nothing. To put real numbers on it, a headlight assembly for a 2023 Honda CR-V runs over $1,000, where the same part just a few years earlier was around $500. And that's a mainstream vehicle, not a luxury one. Climb up into the premium matrix and laser units, and you're into the thousands per side. There's a well-known repair bill for a single high-end headlight that came to over $8,000. And here's why it bleeds into everything else on this list. A minor front end tap that needs a bumper cover and a headlight used to be a cheap, boring repair. Now that one lamp can carry the entire claim over the total loss edge all by itself. 5th, that big tablet bolted to the middle of the dash. On a lot of new trucks, more and more of the vehicle runs through that one screen. The climate control, the windshield defroster, the drive modes, the backup camera. On some, even the glove box release, it's one sheet of glass doing the job that used to be a row of physical knobs and buttons you could find and work without ever taking your eyes off the road. 2 problems come with that. First, it's a single point of failure for a whole pile of functions, and some of them matter for safety. When that screen dies, you can lose your defroster and your reversing camera in the same instant. Second, it's expensive and it's a theft magnet. When it fails, the dealer generally does not repair the screen itself. They swap the entire infotainment module, even when only the touch layer went bad, and the electronics behind it are perfectly fine because component level repair simply isn't offered. That's $1,500 to $3,500 and up, straight out of your pocket. Once the warranty is gone, a knob that broke used to cost you a knob. Now, a glitch in the glass costs you a whole module, and every one of those slabs sitting on the theft and repair ledger nudges your comprehensive premium up a little more. Number 6, air suspension. More and more trucks offer it now, and I'll give it this much. It does ride beautifully, and it can kneel down to help you line up a trailer. But understand what it actually is under there. Rubber air springs at each corner instead of steel ones, fed by an electric compressor, controlled by a valve block, watched by ride height sensors, and run by a control module. That is a whole lot of things that can leak, wear, and fail, all sitting underneath a truck that lives in heat, cold, road salt, and grit. And when it goes expensive. A single air strut is $800 to $2,500. Do all 4 corners along with the compressor and the module, which is common because when one airbag is tired, the other 3 usually aren't far behind, and you're looking at $5,000 and up. The compressor on its own can run $2,000 installed. Now compare that to the thing it replaced, a leaf spring or a coil spring, a dumb, honest chunk of steel that would go 300,000 miles and never once ask you for a thing. The old setup couldn't lower itself to meet a trailer. That's true. It also couldn't strand you sitting flat on the bump stops in a parking lot staring at a $4,000 estimate. 7th, the panoramic glass roof, that big sheet of glass over the whole cab that seemingly everybody wants now. It's a lovely feature right up until the sky decides to throw something at it. That glass is almost always dealer only, no aftermarket substitute available because it's tied into vehicle-specific drainage channels and shade tracks, and replacing it runs $1,500 to $3,000 and up. Now bring back the total loss math from earlier. When a hailstorm rolls through, that glass roof alone can eat $2,000 to $4,000 of the repair budget before anyone has even touched the hood or the doors, where a plain steel roof might have been $800 of dent work. So the truck with the panoramic roof reaches the write-off line with far less total damage than the truck without one. It's gotten to the point where some adjusters in hail country, places like Colorado and Texas, have started flagging panoramic roofs as a total loss risk on site before they've even climbed up to inspect the actual damage. Read that again. The premium feature that costs you extra money at the dealership actively makes your truck worth less and easier to write off the very moment weather shows up. Number 8, and this is the big one, and it hits electric trucks and hybrids both. The high voltage battery pack. On an electric truck, that pack is 30 to 40% of the entire value of the vehicle, and it lives in a case bolted flat to the floor, right down low where road debris, a curb, or a low-speed hit can reach it. Here's the trap, and it is genuinely brutal. If that battery case gets dented, cracked, or punctured even slightly, there is often no way to prove the cells inside are still safe without pulling the entire pack apart. So the insurer looks at the estimate to replace it, and they total the truck. And these packs are not cheap. A full pack for an F-150 Lightning can run $30,000 to $50,000. A Rivian, $20,000 to $35,000 and up. Most electric trucks land somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 for the pack alone. So a 15-mile-an-hour tap that looks like nothing more than a scuffed bumper, the kind you'd guess is a $2,000 job, gets put up on a lift, the shop finds a dent in the battery case, and suddenly the truck is a total loss while looking almost untouched from the outside. That is a big part of why the electric trucks sit right at the very top of the insurance tables. A GMC Hummer EV averages around $4,500 a year to insure a Cybertruck around $4,400 against a truck average that's closer to $2,900. The single most expensive part on the whole vehicle vehicle is the one hanging lowest to the road. Number 9 is the one I told you to wait for, because this is where refusing to cover stops being a turn of phrase and becomes a matter of record. Keyless entry and push button start. You walk up with the fob in your pocket, the truck unlocks itself, you push a button and it starts. Feels like magic. It's also the front door thieves walk right through. The method is called a relay attack, and it's almost stupidly simple. 2 people, 2 cheap electronic boxes. One of them stands near your house and picks up the faint signal your fob is constantly giving off through a wall, through your front door, from a coat pocket in the hallway, and boosts it. The other stands next to your truck holding the second box, which relays that boosted signal and fools the truck into thinking the key is standing right there. Doors open, engine starts, and they're gone in 20 to 30 seconds. No broken glass, no noise, nothing. And because the truck only checks for the key at startup and not while it's moving, it'll keep running for hours down the highway. In the UK, relay attacks now account for something like 70% of all stolen vehicles. In the US, keyless theft reports were up around 12% year over year through early 2025. The insurers see every bit of this and they respond. In high theft areas, your comprehensive premium climbs. Up in Canada, some insurers will surcharge you as much as $1,500 on a high theft vehicle if you haven't fitted an aftermarket immobilizer to it. And here's the documented case I promised you. A few years back, when a whole run of Hyundai and Kia models turned out to be missing a basic anti-theft chip, an immobilizer that was standard on 96% of other vehicles those same years, but on only about a quarter of those 2 brands, theft absolutely exploded. And 2 of the largest insurers in the entire country, State Farm and Progressive, simply stopped writing new policies on those cars in certain cities. They didn't just raise the rate, they refused the business outright. If you drove the wrong trim in the wrong town, you could not buy coverage, period. That is the title of this video made real. A feature, or the lack of one, that made an insurer turn around and walk away. Which brings me to number 10. And I'm going to do the thing this channel is actually for, which is tell you the truth even when a scarier story would land harder. You've probably heard by now that the new single-piece mega castings, where a car maker replaces something like 70 stamped and welded parts in the back of a vehicle with one giant cast slab of aluminum, mean that any decent hit totals your truck because you can't fix a casting. You can only replace the whole enormous thing. Here's the honest version. That story is mostly overblown. When the insurers and the crash repair researchers actually dug into it, they found the big castings only get hit in a small share of crashes. And that shops have worked out how to section and repair them, cutting out just the damaged portion and riveting and bonding in a new piece, often for less than it would cost to fix an equivalent multi-part steel body. One study actually put those cast Model Y rear sections as cheaper to repair than a comparable steel car. So, no, your truck is not automatically scrapped the moment it has a casting in it. And I'm not going to sell you that panic just because it would make a punchier video. But the direction is real, and the direction is the thread running through this entire list. Where that casting does get hit hard, it's replace or section, not beat it out with a hammer. Cast aluminum redirects crash energy instead of crumpling in the predictable, forgiving way steel does. And the broader move across every single one of these 10 features, everything bonded, riveted, sealed, censored, one giant part instead of 10 small, honest ones, quietly shifts the whole business away from repair and toward replace. That's the real story here. Not one villain part you can point at, a direction the whole industry is walking in. So who is actually behind all this? And I want to be careful because it's not a smoke-filled room and it's not a conspiracy. It's something quieter than that and honestly harder to fight because there's nobody to be angry at. It's a bunch of separate parties who each have a perfectly good reason to prefer the expensive, unfixable version, and not one of them has a reason to prefer the simple one. Follow the money, one link at a time. The feature sells the truck on the lot. The big screen, the panoramic roof, the trick headlights, the air ride, those are what the salesman points at, and they carry fat profit margins, so the maker builds them in. Then the truck breaks and the dealer service department is standing there holding the only tools on earth that can recalibrate that camera or swap that sealed module. And here's the rule that runs underneath all of it, the one to carry out of this video if you carry nothing else. There is no money in a repair you can do yourself in your own driveway. And there is a great deal of money in a part that only they are allowed to replace and only they can reteach. The parts maker would far rather sell you a $900 headlight assembly than a $5 bulb. So the $5 bulb quietly disappears from the catalog. And the insurer just measures the risk all of that creates and prices it right back to you and everybody else in the pool alongside you. Nobody in that chain is twirling a mustache. Every one of them is just making the sensible move for their own books. But you stack all those individually sensible moves on top of each other, one after another, and what you get is a truck that's cheaper to build, more profitable to fix, and quietly rigged so that a 3-mile-an-hour tap becomes a total loss. And the one person with no seat at that table, no one making the sensible move on his behalf, is the guy standing in the parking lot holding the keys to a truck that runs perfectly and just got written off over a dented box. He can't even see behind the panel. And here's what actually bothers me about it. Underneath all the money, a truck used to be the most honest machine a regular person owned. You could open it up and see with your own eyes how it worked. When something broke, you had a real shot at understanding it, at pricing it, at fixing it yourself, or at the very least, looking the mechanic dead in the eye and knowing whether the number he gave you was fair. That wasn't nothing. That was a quiet kind of independence that most people never even noticed they had, right up until it was gone. What gets taken, one sealed box at a time, isn't just money out of your pocket. It's that. When a fender bender is a total loss, and a headlight needs a dealer appointment, and a windshield needs a computer retaught by a specialist, the machine stops being something you can know and starts being something you're only ever allowed to pay for. You go from owning a tool to renting a mystery. I don't think most people ever signed up for that trade. I think it got handed to them one convenient feature at a time, and nobody read the fine print out loud. So let's read it out loud. Here's what I want you to take away from all this, quick and clean. The 10, the windshield camera and front radar that turn a rock chip into a calibration bill. The aluminum body that can't be hammered straight. The bumper sensors and cameras that make a parking tap a 4-figure job. The sealed matrix headlights that cost more than an engine rebuild used to. The touchscreen that takes a whole module to fix and drags a pile of your functions down with it when it dies. The air suspension that rides like a dream and fails like a nightmare. The panoramic roof that lowers your total loss line every time the sky opens up. The battery pack that totals the truck from a low-speed tap you'd otherwise shrug off. The keyless system thieves love an insurer's surcharge, and in one real case, flat out refused. And the mega casting, which isn't the monster it gets made out to be, but which points the exact same direction as all the rest. Now, what to do with that? Before you buy a truck, don't just price the truck. Price the fender bender. Ask what a windshield, a headlight, and a front bumper actually costs to fix and recalibrate on that specific model, because the salesman won't bring it up. Get a real insurance quote before you sign the paperwork, not after you've already fallen in love with the thing. If you don't truly need the panoramic roof and the 22-inch wheels, understand that the plain trim will cost you less to own on nearly every one of these fronts, not just at the register. And if it's keyless, build the habit of a Faraday pouch by the door or a steering lock on the wheel. It's cheap and it works. Do that, and the next time somebody backs into you at walking speed in a parking lot, it's a shrug for you instead of the worst month of your year, because you bought the thing with your eyes wide open, knowing exactly what was hiding behind that panel. Now I want to hear from you, because these comment sections are the best part of doing this, and I read every single one of them. Tell me what you drive and what a simple repair actually ran you. The windshield, the headlight, the little parking ding that turned into a big number. And I especially want to hear two things. If you've ever had a perfectly good truck totaled over a hit that barely dented it, tell me that story, because those are the ones that stick with people. And if you turn wrenches for a living, tell me what you've watched change in the shop over the years, what used to be an afternoon with a dolly that's now a diagnostic appointment and a calibration fee. That stuff is gold, and it's genuinely the reason I keep making these. If this was useful to you, subscribe, because the next one is already bothering me. It's about two little words that show up on a spec sheet and quietly cost people an entire transmission. Lifetime fluid, filled for life. Sounds like a gift, doesn't it? Never change it. Never think about it. They've handled it for you. I'm going to show you exactly whose life they mean when they print that, because I promise you it is not the life of your truck. And the day you find out the hard way is a very expensive day. Until then, do me one favor. Next time you're standing on a dealer lot and a shiny new truck is winking at you from across the way, walk around to the back of it, look hard at that rear corner, and ask yourself one honest question. What happens to all of this at 3 miles an hour? Take care of yourselves and take care of your trucks.